Well, for years, the Manchester derby was a little bit like a parent playing FIFA against their kid. United holding the controller, City just sort of watching. But yesterday, it looked like United had their controller unplugged. What have Ruben Amorim, Alfred Albert, and Scott Duncan all got in common? Crook?
I don't know, but go on, you tell me.
They are all Manchester United managers that have taken charge of over 20 games in the top flight and have a lower win ratio than 27%. Look, Manchester City came into this game having lost to Spurs and Brighton. Did they massively recalibrate over the course of the international break, Mickey Gray? Or did Manchester United just make them look very good by putting them under zero pressure?
I think there's no doubt that Man City are going to have bigger tests this season. What wound me up was it being a derby game and just the performance. I think there was spells where you could see what United wanted to do, maybe 10 or 15 minutes in the first half, and you maybe had a spell of about 5 minutes in the second half. But other than that, when you consider how much money they went out and spent in the summer, I know Cunha wasn't playing and Sesko was playing his first game, but I just didn't see any difference in from what I saw last season in Man United's performance. And there's been spells this season where it looked like there was going to be improvement, but I think that probably has to go down, barring the Liverpool game, as maybe your biggest game of the season. And to put on a performance like that, I thought was really shabby. I really did. And it looked like the players again had switched off. I'm not quite sure still if they're enjoying playing this system. But Manchester City, full credit. I mean, they approached the game in the right way. Obviously, you've just touched on the bad news at the beginning of the game. But they were professional and they went out and they put on a performance and they knew exactly what they needed to do. They knew how to break Manchester United down. As I said before, I think they'll have bigger tests than what they had against Man United. But from the two sides, there's only one that's going to be challenging for those European spots come the end of the season. And I think it's going to be another dreary season for Man United.
Well, I think Manchester City did well. I thought Haaland answered any of the critics about his abilities, and there was a little bit of a discussion, wasn't there, in the build up to the game? Who's the best striker in the world? As if you can sort of just sort of binary decide who it is on a week to week basis. Obviously, he's got the history so far in the Premier League, and 50 goals in 50 Premier League appearances at home is testament to that. Foden, I thought, had a good first half. I like Oscar Bob. I think he's very cute on the ball. O'Reilly looks so comfortable at left back into midfield yesterday. They weren't perfect. I think Rodri was still a little bit loose in possession. Kusinov is far too eager and he will cause you problems over the course of the season. But United didn't have the wherewithal to put them under pressure, to punish them. Where are City, though, Alex? Let's focus on them first before we move into Manchester United. Uh, I suppose we'll find out a little bit more about them when we see them against Arsenal next week.
100%. That's going to be a much different game. I think it's hard to gauge too much from City's performance. Were they back to their best, or were Manchester United just really easy to play against? I think we can say that Erling Haaland is back on top form with a number of goals that he scored for club and country this season. He was back to bullying defenders. He certainly did that with Luke Shaw for the second goal and with the way that he ran from pretty much inside his own half for his second and City's third. I think Phil Foden produced a really mature performance. He was an excellent header. But I've been looking at the stats, and we're going to talk a lot about United's system, and particularly in midfield. Phil Foden actually spent a lot of the game when City didn't have the ball, dropping in to help Rodri, because I think it's pretty clear that he's still not fully fit. He got through twice as many defensive contributions as Bruno Fernandes, and it was Fernandes who was supposed to be playing in a deeper role. So credit to him. And I spoke to Foden afterwards, and I asked the question, are you extra motivated now because you've been left out by England? And he said, yeah, it's a big driving factor for me. I love to play for my country and I want to be at the World Cup. So I think that could be good news as far as City are concerned. But as you say, we'll learn more about exactly where they're at Arsenal next week. I still make them third favourites behind Liverpool and Arsenal for the title, but we could do a whole podcast on Manchester United's failings. All of that early season positivity, I think, was swept away in that derby yesterday.
Okay, well, and Burmo for me was the best of the United bunch, but looking around that team, I think it just still lacks a huge amount of quality, and it does look rudderless, doesn't it? Who are you blaming now, then, Crook?
I'm blaming the system, as I did when we had that heated debate with you and Troy on the back of the Grimsby debacle. There's too many players who are being asked to do roles that they're not accustomed to. Bruno Fernandes is the obvious one, and I can't believe that Ruben Amorim is still experimenting with that after what happened in the Europa League final in Bilbao. Amad Diallo looks like a little boy lost to me. He doesn't know if he's a right winger, a left winger, a right wing back, a left wing back. He played in the number 10 position yesterday and was unable to influence proceedings. I think part of the reason Luke Shaw gave up when Haaland went past him and bullied him is because he's not a centre-back. He's being asked to play a role that he is also not accustomed to. I know he's done it for England at times, but it's not his preferred position. Šeško is going to get a lot of flack because at the moment he doesn't look like a £70 million striker. He didn't touch the ball once inside the Manchester City penalty area over the course of the 90-odd minutes. Is that his fault, or is that because the system doesn't serve his strikers? Rasmus Højlund has scored within 15 minutes of his debut for Napoli at the weekend. That's not gone unnoticed. This system does not work in the Premier League. You talk about lack of quality. The only reason Patrick Dorgu was signed, the only reason he's in the team, is because he's the only player that United have got that can really play as a left wing back. He is rubbish. He's just not good enough.
That might be a little bit harsh. Let's ask a left wing back, exactly what the problems are with Dorgu and that system. Look, I think Ruben Amorim has been asked about the system more than he's been asked about anything else since he came in. Is this just a media fixation with the way that they set up and the fact that he is quite dogmatic about the 3-4-3 formation? Or is it a legitimate criticism? Does it change the way you operate as players? Because the system doesn't dictate that you don't get booked. The system doesn't dictate that you don't go in for tackles. The system doesn't dictate that Phil Foden does more defensive actions than Bruno Fernandes. The system doesn't dictate that Patrick Dorgu gets into a crossing position and then cannot deliver the final ball. So is it all about the system? Is that a legitimate complaint? Is there more to it than that? There's got to be, hasn't there?
Well, Sam, look, I'm along with everybody else, and I agree with Crookie and yourself. I don't think this system's going to work at Manchester United, but it's not just down to a system. It is down to personnel, and the personnel that are playing in certain positions, they're just not good enough. You bring in Patrick Dorgu. I've seen enough of him now to know that he's not going to be good enough to play for Manchester United. As a wing back, your job is obviously first and foremost to defend, but then as a wing back, you have to get in the opposition's half. You have to create chances for your forward players, i.e. Šeško and Mbumo, Cunha if he's playing, Xerxes, whoever it might be. He's crossing over the first 3 or 4 games. I know he got left out of the game before Manchester City. Has been awful. His end product is awful. Mazraoui was brought back into the starting 11 against Manchester City. His quality in the final third wasn't good enough. And as a defence, in your mind, the first and foremost is let's keep clean sheets. Well, they've not been able to keep clean sheets. They've not been able to keep clean sheets for a long time. Bruno Fernandes, how many times have midfield players drifted off him since he's been playing in this new position and scored goals inside of the 18-yard box? Because Bruno Fernandes, his first thought is an offensive midfield player and create opportunities for his teammates, which he has done, but he didn't do it against Manchester City. So, yeah, it's square pegs in round holes. And that is the problem that Manchester United have got. And I think the old adage is just work hard. And the players are clearly not working hard enough. Yes, they do for 45 minutes, but in the second half, you can see players are switching off, drifting into their own minds and playing their own game instead of playing a structured game of football that is going to get you results. Playing for a club like Manchester United, where the expectancy is to go and win football matches every single week. There's so much wrong. I said in commentary against Man City that they needed to go out and spend another £230 million to get things right at Man United. They had issues in the summer, which was goalkeeping problem, a holder midfield player, and probably a striker to come in and maybe get the goals for Manchester United. One of those positions got addressed with a kind of a type of person who you'd maybe expect to come in at Manchester United for the price of £74.5 million. No holder midfield player and a young goalkeeper that got brought in with hours to spare after the transfer window was closed. Those issues are still going to be there in January. Whether they're able to adapt and change that, I'm not quite sure, because I don't think they're going to be in a position to change things.
And this is the key thing, isn't it? Right. This is a Manchester United squad that is going through a major change. It's a Manchester United corporation that's going through a major transitional period. It's going to take a long time to sort it out. And you have to have a degree of patience. Gary Neville said yesterday, "Look, I can't get angry anymore because this is a nothing performance." But he almost had to accept that this is an interim Manchester United. You can't turn it round in one transfer window. You can't turn it round in two transfer windows. You probably can't turn it round in three transfer windows. Such has been the neglect and the poor recruitment over the course of a period of now nearly 13 years, maybe going back even longer than that. So when you're in that situation, do you have to accept, Crook, that you are going to have to ride out a period of, I suppose, transition's the wrong word. No, it is transition, but almost reassessing your expectations of what you're going to get from Manchester United?
I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, when Ineos came in, United was sixth in the Premier League. They went on to win the FA Cup that season, you'll remember. They're miles away from being sixth in the Premier League and winning any trophies. So who's to blame? The players, the manager. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's been an absolute disaster of an owner as far as I'm concerned. He's got just about every big decision wrong, and the images of him shaking his head at the end of the game yesterday stuck in the throat a little bit, to be honest. But then, I've already mentioned, I was at Bournemouth on Saturday. They are brilliant. They've got good recruitment. They've got a good manager. They've got players who put a shift in for the shirt. Are Manchester United fans to expect teams like Bournemouth to be better than them? No. There's still certain standards. They spent over £200 million on players in this summer transfer window. So was I expecting a worse start to the season since 1992? Absolutely not. I was predicting United might finish fifth this season. When you look at Newcastle's issues with Isak, you look at Aston Villa and the problems they've had with recruitment. So I take your point, but I don't think you can just accept that after 10 months in charge, it's getting worse, not better.
I don't think you have to accept it, but I think you have to understand it, right? You just cited someone who have been the subject of a lot of investment and a long-term project with owners, technical directors, and players that are aligned, right? So you've got Bournemouth is a long-term project. Let's not pretend that it isn't. It has been. It's been built from the ground up by a very good manager over a number of years, handed over to somebody else and handed over to somebody else. You'll mention Brighton in the same breath. Again, it's a long-term project. Some of those decisions that Tony Bloom made didn't work, so he changed them and he made
Everton are sixth.
different movements in directions. They are. But that's because at the moment, are they set up for long-term success? Do you think that over the course of the next few years that they are going to go on and be dominant in the Premier League? It's a different project. Everton is a different project to Manchester United. Manchester United are looking to strip it back, rebuild and start again. And that takes time. You were banging on about the Glazers for years and years and years and years, and you wanted a different owner. You've got a different owner now. If I'd have said
You've
to
got
you
a Glazer in disguise.
Wait, hold on. If I'd said to you when you were asking for a new person to come in and run this football club, you would have said, I want that man or woman to be a local person with a Manchester United interest, who cared about the club, who was supremely rich and was able to invest in the future of it, right? Now, I don't know how many supremely rich billionaires there are that are Manchester United fans from the local area, but I reckon there's probably single digits across the world. You've got one. He is in charge. Is he going to be the nicest, cuddliest person to make every decision correctly in the way that you want him to do it? Probably not. He's a billionaire. He didn't become a billionaire by being the nicest bloke in the room. But ultimately, you've got to give him the chance to do it. It's okay for you to sit there and say, oh, I don't like this decision. That was wrong. We should get rid of these players. Oh, why has he got rid of all these players? He should make sure this bloated organisation is trimmed back and it's more streamlined. And then when he does it, complain about the way that he does it. But for him and his group of people, he has to be super focused. He has to think about the long term, and they have to be allowed to get on with it. It isn't going to happen overnight. There's no way it's going to happen overnight. It's a long-term project. It's a long road back. And unfortunately, you are just going to have to wait. Because if you keep chopping and changing, it's only going to get worse.
That's a brilliant speech, but you tell me one thing that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has got right since he got here. Are you in a position to argue that the decisions he's made have set the club backwards? The Eric Ten Hag debacle, the Dan Ashworth debacle, even
You
hiring,
wanted Eric Ten Hag gone.
even hiring. He wanted him gone. They gave him a new
No,
contract.
you wanted him
Somebody else
gone.
wanted the job.
You wanted him gone. You wanted him gone. Now you're saying that you want him back, or
Well,
that it was the wrong decision.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the way they went about it was a complete farce. They were basically having a beauty parade of various managers. And then because nobody actually wanted the job at that time, they kept Eric Ten Hag, gave him a new contract, gave him more money to spend in that transfer window, and then sacked him a few months into the season. They spent months trying to get Dan Ashworth and a lot of money getting Dan Ashworth. They got rid of him within months. And actually, I think that was a massively bad decision. I think if you want someone to come in and change the culture, that is Dan Ashworth. The mistake they made was they thought they were getting a recruitment expert, which Dan Ashworth isn't. Again, didn't do their research properly. Then they hire Ruben Amorim, who I know for a fact was on Liverpool's list of potential targets before they went for Arne Slot. The reason they didn't hire him is because he's so wedded to this system. They didn't think it would work in the Premier League. They didn't think the Manchester United, the Liverpool squad was set up to
We
play
know
that
that.
system. Nor did Dan Ashworth. So they've
But
hired
we
a
know that.
manager who doesn't suit the players. So tell me what he's done right, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Give me
Well,
one thing
I
he's
tell you
done
actually,
right.
I tell you
Training
what I
ground.
think he has
The
done
training
right.
ground looks all
I
right.
tell you what I think he's done right. He's sorted out the training ground. He's streamlined the business behind the scenes. I don't think he's done it in the right manner, and I think we can all argue. Look, I've got friends that work at Manchester United, and things have changed there, and it's not a great place to be at the moment. But we all sat here and said this football club needs a major change, and now it's had a major change. We're all moaning about how they go about it,
Don't cock
and
it
I can
up along the
understand
way.
that.
Don't make
Well,
bad
you can
decisions
make
along the way.
mistakes. You make mistakes. Dan Ashworth was a mistake. They got the wrong person in to do the wrong job. And they decided, rather than allow that to go on forever and ever and ever and cause problems behind the scenes and friction between the senior management team, they decided to be decisive and make a decision quickly. Other clubs, and you've mentioned Bournemouth, we've talked about Brighton in the past, they've changed sporting directors in the not too distant past. They've gone through managers. They made mistakes with managers over the course of their tenure, Tony Bloom and his group. Look at Sami Hyypiä. Once they
One
made that
manager.
mistake,
One manager.
but once they made that mistake, they then decided, right, okay, we have to do this differently now. And they learned from that. And that's what this group is going to have to do. They're not perfect. There's no way that every decision they make and have made is right. But if we sit here for the next 10 years nitpicking and telling them to change everything every 5 minutes, then we're going to find ourselves in a situation where Manchester United 10 years down the line are in the same position as when Radcliffe and Clough walked through the door. He might not be everyone's cup of tea. I totally get that. He might not have made the best decisions so far. But if you keep chopping and changing manager, chopping and changing system, not getting better people through the door to play football in that football team, you are never, ever going to return to the top table. Ever. There's got to be patient.
Sam Crookie, don't you think that people's opinions of Jim Ratcliffe and everybody behind the scenes would have been different if they were winning football matches?
Of course.
Then he would have been able to go on doing his business of losing people who've been working at the football club for many, many years. I think you just touched the training ground there, Sam. I actually did the tour when they opened the new training ground, 50 million quid. Inside, yes, it looks a lot different to what it was, but I don't know, do the players actually deserve to be training in a training ground like that at the moment? I'm not quite sure about that. I look at some of the players. Is this down to the manager, or is this down to the coaching staff, the technical directors? Is it down to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, because he's the one who's obviously signing the checks away? Of the players that are actually coming in at Manchester United, barring Cunha, barring Umbumo, who've probably been the two hits at Manchester United, can you actually pinpoint one individual player that has improved since they've walked through the door at Manchester United under the tenure of, you can maybe even say even Eric Ten Hag, but Ruben Amorim? Because I'm not seeing these improvements. And I quietly said to Crookie, I think it was the other day, secretly, if you had a word with every individual player at Manchester United and said, do you like playing this system? And I know I'm going back to the system. I know I'm kind of going back a little bit here, but if you ask those individual players, do you like playing this system? I don't think you get one person putting their hand up and saying, yes, I do.
And you talk about players going forwards. Who were United's two best players last season? Bruno Fernandes and Amad Diallo. Who are the two biggest victims of this system? Bruno Fernandes and Amad Diallo. What manager worth their salt comes into a team, looks at the two best players and where they're playing, and thinks, you know what? Because I want to play this system, I'm going to take you out of the position where you've been thriving. I'm going to ask you to do stuff that is alien to you. It doesn't make any sense. And you say nitpicking. It's the worst start since 1992. That's not nitpicking. Ruben
I
Amorim has
totally
taken
agree with that.
fewer points than any other manager who's been ever present in the Premier League during his tenure. It's a shocking record. And the one thing I was interested in, maybe Mickey's got a view on this as well. One of the quotes he gave to the written journalist, because everybody was pressing him on the system. Gary Neville raised it on Sky about Fernandes. I obviously raised it. The written journalist raised it. We can't all be wrong. Amorim said in that press conference, there are a lot of things that you have no idea what happened during these months. What does he mean by that? Is that a pop at the hierarchy? At the players?
But this is what I'm saying, is that it's all right for you and I and everyone to sit there and go, oh, it's the system, it's this, it's that, it's that. The problems at Manchester United are not exclusive to the 11 players that are on the field and the manager in the dugout. The problems at Manchester United are all over the place and have been for ages. You know that because you've been involved with people that have been at that club for such a long time that they can tell you what it's like to work there, what it's like behind the scenes, what the negotiations are like, what the situation is like when you're trying to do a deal or get this or get that through the gate. It's hard work. And that is why there has to be a degree of reality check here that this is not going to turn around overnight. But look, I think you've got some valid points on the team selection. And certainly we're all, I think, sitting there going, they need to put more energy in, they need to be more fight, there needs to be more about them. But I just don't see it changing anytime soon. And I think it's a really easy thing to say, they should have done this, they should have done this, they should have done this, they should have done this. Manchester United are operating in the glare of the world. Brighton, Bournemouth, Brentford, all the other clubs are operating far away from the spotlight. So they can make their mistakes. They can do things that are wrong. Everything that Manchester United do is jumped upon. We've done 20 minutes on this podcast talking about nothing other. And that's because it's the biggest story in town. Every time they do anything, it is. Look, as far as the game's concerned, I think we should say Manchester City did really well. I wanted to mention that they've got Napoli on Thursday night and the return of Kevin De Bruyne to the Etihad Stadium. Napoli are the top team in Italy right now. De Bruyne scored at the weekend, and so did Rasmus Højlund, the one that got away. I'm going to say nothing more on that.